It's me, y'all, Kareem here, your GIS DJ, whatever the fuck I'm calling myself today. Uh, Side note, this is gonna have a bunch of cursing in it because that's how I communicate. But we're trying to do this geostatistical interpolation introduction um, exercise here in ArcGIS. I bought a year subscription to this thing, and so far I haven't really used it because I've switched over to open source, and I really don't do much geo stuff anymore. So this is just me jumping back in and kind of getting my feet wet. A little background on my end. I do have a master's degree in geospatial information science from the University of Maryland, as well as several other degrees that are in either geography or GIS. So I have a lot of experience, especially on the ARC side, since that's all they teach. But since then, I have delved into the wonderful world of Python, the wonderful world of open source, and that has pulled me in the direction of open source. But, you know, just to be as thorough as possible with all of the different applications out there. It's good to actually brush up your knowledge on what's going on here. So just following this document or training. So whenever you buy ArcGIS stuff, you'll get these free trainings. You can actually access it directly from their website. And I'm kind of just stepping through a lot of that today. And just complaining about the intricacies of dealing with ArcPy and its crap. So here I'm like complaining about. So this is the exploratory analysis, and a portion of the tutorial. We have the state of Oregon in all its majesty, and it's calculating this climate stuff, climate data. This is for the month of August. And just creating a interpolation map based off of that data. But I did see that they actually added this like exploratory, capability inside of the Esri toolbox that allows you to like run multiple EDAs at once, which is really cool. But at the same time, it's really fucking slow. So yeah, just wanted to explore how many points it was actually doing because I can look at it right here on the map and say, well, it's like maybe 1,000 points. It's not even that. It's like 500 points, and this kind of dropped me into like detective mode, as they say, trying to figure out what's the best way to get the count of points. I know that the describe module and the data access is probably the easiest way to kind of get that. And I forgot how to deal with this because everything is like primitively it's all ArcPy objects, which freaking insane. Anything about ArcPy and the basis of it, it's like is wrapped around ArcPy objects, Arc objects, which is like ancient freaking technology from the 80s. They didn't want to write that over. I completely understand. It's a lot of code in the background. Oh yeah, as a side note, I used to sub for Esri, so know a lot about that crap too. So trying to catch myself not to curse that much in a family show. So kind of jump through a bunch of hoops here, just kind of figure out the way to get your count programmatically because I'm not going through buttonology. Just That fucking shit sucks. But that's the way that they teach people. And I'm like, well, if you're going to do this and you're going to run this EDA on a billion points, are you going to sit around and wait for ArcGIS Pro to like make up its mind, or are you just going to run a script and walk away and then come back an hour later after you had your coffee and boom, done? Now you're the hero. Um, you're going to do the latter, right? And that's the whole premise of like having a scriptable language inside of your program, but they don't teach that for some reason. It's so fucking annoying. It's really annoying. Um, and that's just one of the things that I learned, like right after I got out of um, bachelor's, having my graduating with my bachelor's degree, went on a post sabbatical at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and what were we doing? Digitizing and evaluating and validating that the points were on the line, on the node, blah blah blah. And that shit got really uh, annoying very quickly, and I made it up to myself like, oh, there must be a way to automate this, and kind of fell down a rabbit hole of Model Builder. And Model Builder, if you know anything about Model Builder, this is back in the days of old Arc. I don't know what you can do in ArcGIS Pro, if it's the same or not. I think it is. That you could export your model to a Python script and just run it from there. And that's what really got me into geospatial analysis, you know, not depending on a very clunky interface to do heavy analysis. It's all right, okay for stuff like this where you can like just pop something on the map and just view it and hey, I want to just create a map real quick. But for anything that has legs to it or whatever, it's best to have some type of way to automate it. And that's what I came up with. So like, and my bosses kind of got on me and it was like all on my ass, like, why are you doing it? And I'm like, because I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. It simply seemed like I was like every day just digitizing and moving points and clicking the same button and buttonology forever. And I'm like, F that. Fuck that shit. I want to do something else with my life. um, so after that, I kind of moved on to the University of Maryland, where that program, the MPS program, um, one of the better ones in the country, but they're more focused on Esri products than anything else, which is you know, it's neither here nor there. I mean, it got me in the door to a lot of different opportunities. I'm really appreciative of that. But um, bye bye. So what I'm complaining about is like in order to get a count of your points programmatically, there's two different ways to do it. Essentially, one is using the ArcPy.management.get count method. Um, if you're familiar with this, like you have to like point to either your environment first in order for it to take a string like this, or you can actually point to the reference inside of your geodatabase um, by pointing to its path. Um, Either way is going to give you what you need. But the only problem with that is, as you can see with all of my errors trying to access this thing, it spits out an object. That's not an int. It looks like a string, and when you actually get the actual property of it, it is a string. which is also another gripe that I have. I've done this multiple times before, where I I forget to um, change the type of the incoming data from string to int, because it's only going to be an int. Um, and this object here is like literally an ArcPy object. So as you can see, if you know anything about Python, you can wrap it in a type um, method. It'll generate whatever that value is. It is um, not synonymous um, with ArcPy. I mean, you can do it with anything in Python. So one of the cool things that you can learn, also is great method in standard Python that will allow you to like evaluate if that value is an instance of a particular type or a particular class. As long as you define that class, right? Like um, by default, you're not going to pull in ArcPy objects, right? So you don't have to import that by default and then do a instances. Oh, sorry, kind of went on a tangent there. So, but it's so annoying. Like, okay, I remember back in the days when I was just a lonely programmer, the GIS guy at NOAA, and this would trip me out, trip me out all the freaking time. Like, this would be the thing that got me every single time. It was so annoying. I'm like, why don't you guys, if it's get count, right? Why would it evaluate to an object? Why can't you have something inside of your script that basically like produces it as an int? Um, Even if you like add a parameter here, like I don't want an ArcPy object, I want an int, or I want the string. That would be even better instead of like adding this little freaking method which doesn't really tell me anything. Get output. What the fuck is that? Sorry. But yeah, it's these types of things that drove people to go to open source, to QGIS, because the layout, the way that the methods are out here doesn't make any sense from a programming standpoint. So you have these things where, oh, I'm going to write up this really quick script. It's going to take me you know, an hour or two, a day to knock out, and then you forget. And what happens? You know, Unless you wrote a bunch of tests, which that's another thing that Arc wasn't really great at, like providing a test suite for some of this stuff. If you had an ArcPy license or ArcGIS license on your machine, then it's fine. But if you wanted to deploy this or scale it or do something like that, it's it's difficult to say the least. So a little bit of ranting uh, from the beginning, just to get it out of my get it off my chest. But that's been the bane of my existence until I got a real like developer job. Um, but like I mentioned beforehand, it's best to go back in and like um, review these types of things, especially when things are changing, times are changing, and we're introducing AI into just geospatial, and we're introducing AI into every damn thing, right? So it's really important that you keep on top of it. So that's why I'm here. Let's continue on. Um, from this little step through, and I've gone through a lot of it already. Um, like I mentioned beforehand, it kind of steps you through, and it's great for people that don't have skills or whatever. But for me, I'd like to see what the results would be like if I change a parameter or something like that. And I'm I'm lazy and I'm like not good with button pushing. So when I run this and I say, okay, click on this button to do it, um, things go wrong. So I want it to be something that's deterministic, that I can like rerun without opening this geoprocessing tab, um, which I miss the old geoprocessing tab. This is cool, but you know, I wish it was just it popped out by itself. Because when you're doing geoprocessing or anything like that, you know, at the end of the day, you're not going to like run it from here every single time, right? But it's taking up a lot of screen space too. So, um, just another rant. I'm sorry. All right. So what I usually do is like, um, and again, I've already done a lot of this stuff. So if you don't know, you can provide aliases in Python, and this is the way I do it: arcpy.ga, sga, highlight it. Oh, I didn't highlight that. Right. There you go. So, and that's the geostatistical analysis module in ArcPy, and it gives you all the tools that like belong to the the class of um, methods that are associated with like any kind of interpolation. So you set that, makes it easier for you to remember instead of like arcpy.ga. Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's really kind of annoying. Um, then what I do is like usually when I go and do any kind of like check, I'm going to go and do a help on it, and this is standard Python. And when you do that, it just prints out the help that's associated with it. Usually, it's in the what do you call those? Um, it's usually in triple quotes. I'm losing it. I'm sorry. Um, but yeah, the help is under the actual function that's associated usually. And then when you do a help, it will print out that first line or multiple lines uh, regarding that function, and that's what that's doing right now. So you can see it gives you all the inputs, you know, input features. Like I mentioned beforehand, if you're working directly in ArcPy, or ArcMap, or I can't say ArcPy, or ArcMap, ArcGIS Pro, um, you pull the feature layer directly in um, as a string, and it should recognize it. If you're doing it as standalone Python, but I would advise you pulling it in as just a string. Then it's just a string path, you know, that's associated with that data. Value field, that's a field. I didn't understand that part, but when I added a string to it, it understood it. So that's a string, not. I guess they missed the string component there. Interpolation methods, you know, various interpolation methods, and I'm just looking at these and kind of mapping them to their values here. And to their credit, Esri is pretty good at those types of things where they'll give you the explanation right there in the help. Criterion, I didn't understand this one. And maybe I'll come back to that, but it's a string value as well. But the weird thing about Esri, if there are multiple values or multiple values for a particular parameter, they'll all be in string format, but you have to um, concatenate them with what is it, a semicolon. which will throw you off. So whenever you're entering multiple values, such as these interpolation methods, make sure that you add a semicolon in your list of strings between the between each string. So here simple kriging, and then a semicolon, ordinary kriging, semicolon. You get the idea. Okay. Maybe I should make this bigger so if I do make this an educational thing, then y'all won't really jump on me for not saying the right thing here or showing the right thing. Criterion, the criteria hierarchy, same string values, and the rest of the stuff, and then the output. So the output could be a string as well, or if you want to specify exactly where that table is going to reside, particularly in a geodatabase. You have to set the environment first, though, which I don't know if this is going to work, or you can set the path. So the output will be basically in a geodatabase. I don't know if you can output it to a table. I guess we can test that a little later here. Geostat layer, and this is basically just the layer that it creates as a representation of the output of the table. Real cool stuff. Whenever you're dealing with a new function in ArcPy or any language, really, Python, JavaScript, it's good to have help. And that's the way that I do it all the time, because sometimes you don't have access to things like the internet. So good way to kind of pull your stuff together. Okay, so from there, I always create a hash map, or in Python lingo, it's a dictionary. So it's basically just mapping the values that you want to each parameter. So each one of these parameters are in a string format. So as you saw earlier, the in features is one parameter, is actually the first parameter, and then climate is the next. So the cool thing about this is it doesn't have to be in order, which is great, because you may forget, okay, what features go in first, and what, by default, ArcPy can by default it provides it in a tuple or a list of values that are associated with each one of these parameters in order. So if we wanted to do this without making a hash map out of it, then we'll just be climate, mean, TF7, et cetera, right? But in this case, we're going to throw it in a hash map. You'll see why in here in a minute. So we got all that, like I was mentioning before. You have the semicolon, and the semicolon in ArcPy parlance indicates that there are multiple string values that are associated with that. I don't know why they do it that way. They can easily just pass in a list of strings to provide that, but that's the way that they do it. As you can see, you have the criterion, etc., blah blah blah. I was testing out the worst case criterion and the simple criterion. I forget exactly what it was. But yeah, that's in the what you call it. It's a little different. The tutorial stuff is a little different. Okay, so when you set that up, it's going to be a dictionary. It's out there, ready for you to use. And then all you have to do is go in here I've done this several times already. Create a variable for yourself so you'll know exactly where your data is, just in case you have to write some other cool code that will work off of that object, and then set it up saying, hey, exploratory interpolation. And here comes the magic here. So in Python, if you wanted to pass a bunch of your variables that you have in a hash map or in a dictionary, then you can add this double star, which indicates that each one of these key value pairs inside of the dictionary is going to be a value that you can use. It doesn't really matter. So, like, the cool thing about it is you can have a bunch of other keyword arguments. What they call keyword arguments. It's basically a keyword and a value, a key and a value, right? So I could put Cartoon Network Deputy Dog as a key and a value pair. It doesn't matter, but as long as you have the appropriate arguments for the function that you're running, it should pick up only those keyword arguments, the key and the values that are associated with that interpolation value. Keep on saying interpolation for that function, and that goes for anything in Python. So whenever you do this, it kind of grants you the flexibility of, hey, I want to add this as an environmental variable. Well, I mean, that's a little extreme. Environmental variables are usually just strings, but if you know anything about Python, it's easy to convert from a string to a dictionary. Or if you're pulling in a JSON value, so let's say you have this particular set of values in a JSON. It's pretty easy to pull this in as a JSON. You just need to JSON dump from that file and set that as an argument, and then set that as a variable, and then that variable itself will be set to parse. Just simply like this, right? What I'm saying here is, like, you could have this in a file somewhere, right? And then you open up the file, you read the first line, and then you can dump that as a variable. And then that's really configurable, right? Because, hey, I wanted to change it so that it's only pointing to simple rigging. Well, all you have to do is change the file and not the script that you wrote in order to do it. It's really cool stuff. So, okay, here we go. We're gonna run this. It takes a while. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's like handling all of the other like functions inside of ArcPy or ArcMap, or keep on saying ArcMap. So old school. ArcGIS Pro. But at the same time, like, it's actually crunching the numbers as well. So it handles two different things. So I shouldn't be that harsh on it, but you would think that it would be a little bit faster. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's neither here nor there. Come on. All right, I was trying to make this bigger for y'all. 1 second, I'll just close down Python here. And as you can see, it gives you the output, blah, blah, blah. In a real world scenario, if you wanted to put this on a map, you would use the arcpy.mp. I think that's the name of it. It's been a very long time since I've touched the mapping module. I'm an old school ArcPy head, and I remember it was arcpy.mapping. It had a little bit of, it had its own set of quirks, really. But at the end of the day, you can do stuff like this and then throw it on a map and then, print that map out as like a PDF or a ping or whatever. It's really cool stuff. And NP is it does a similar thing. I've actually um, done a few seminars actually with a few people from Esri about how to use this this capability. When I say this capability, it meaning the mapping capability in ArcPy, and it was great. But since then, I haven't touched it. I've been meaning to like go back through my existing code that I was working on and know and some of my like old classes to kind of like refresh because even though we have these capabilities, you know, to create these instant web maps and all that kind of stuff, there's still benefit of having hard copy maps. If you've ever been in a scenario where you have, um, especially in emergency planning, emergency management, things like that, um, having that instead of relying on internet to print out your maps and stuff like that helps tremendously. Um, so my advice to y'all, if I actually post this, I might have to listen to it, review it, make sure I don't sound like a dummy. Uh, is that review some of your stuff that you've done in the past, especially if you've programmed before, or even if you haven't. Um, Go in here and like test your skills out. This was something that I just thought of, and like, hey, I'm kind of rambling to myself. I remember doing this stuff in school, and it's really interesting to kind of pick up your the stuff that you don't really use much anymore, your abilities, and figure out if they're using the same kind of deal in the new platforms. So this has been a minute for me. So yeah, if you have any comments or questions or whatever, hit me up. If you like this, just like give me a comment. I don't have to like it. um, that's it for me. Signing off. Bye bye.